You'll recall The Outlaw with Jane Russell in the press, and he won the first Oscar Award for the best comedy film. He also flew around the world setting records. He also bought half of Las Vegas, and he also was America's #1 defense contractor, and he dated all those beautiful women that you know, Katharine Hepburn,
right.
Davis, Lana Turner. But the fact was, this is a man that absolutely was elusive. To everyone who knew him, they knew him differently. So you interview someone, and they will give you a different story each time.
He demanded his privacy. He was obsessive about it, and yet he had the people who worked for him keep detailed records of every move he made, from the time he ate to the time he went to the bathroom. Why?
This is the story. He did not have that done. They did it to keep track and refer to it because he was so compulsively controlling that when he would talk to them, they'd have to know exactly what he was talking about. He had an incredible memory.
Did he know they were keeping these records?
No. He did not know they had the records, and when he found out about it, he wanted them all destroyed as they were going. He thought they were destroyed. The fact that they weren't destroyed would have killed him if he hadn't already been.
And it's some of those documents that were kept about him that you scoured to write this book.
Over 110,000 pages I rifled through.
You say
or use the equity in your home to consolidate your credit card or other debts? Just log on.
Yeah. This just in, you were looking at obviously a very disturbing live shot there. That is the World Trade Center, and we have unconfirmed reports this morning that a plane has crashed into one of the towers of the World Trade Center. CNN Center right now is just beginning to work on this story, obviously calling our sources and trying to figure out exactly what happened, but clearly something relatively devastating happening this morning there on the south end of the island of Manhattan. That is, once again, a picture of one of the towers of the World Trade Center.
Well, you can see these pictures. It's obviously something devastating has happened. And again, unconfirmed report that a plane has crashed into one of the towers there. We are efforting more information on this subject as it becomes available to you.
Right now we've got Sean Murtaugh. He is a CNN producer on the telephone right now. Sean, what can you tell us about what you know?
This is Sean Murtaugh. I just was standing on the Vice President of Finance.
Sean,
Vice President of Finance for CNN.
Sean, we're on the air right now. What can you tell us about this situation?
Hello?
Yes, Sean, you're on the air right now. Go ahead. What can you tell us?
I just witnessed a plane that appeared to be cruising slightly lower than normal altitude over New York City, and it appears to have crashed into, I don't know which tower it is, but it hit directly in the middle of one of the World Trade Center towers.
Sean, what kind of plane? Was it a small plane, a jet?
It was a jet.
We want to tell you what we know as we know it. We just got a report in that there's been some sort of explosion at the World Trade Center in New York City. One report said, and we can't confirm any of this, that a plane may have hit one of the two towers of the World Trade Center, but again, you're seeing the live pictures here. We have no further details than that. We don't know anything about what they have concluded happened there this morning, but we're going to find out and, of course, make sure that everybody knows on the air.
These are, of course, the
two live right now and show you a picture of the World Trade Center, where I understand. Do we have it? No, we do not. We have a breaking story, though. We're going to come back with that in just a moment. First, this is today on NBC.
We don't know about anything that has happened here other than the fact that there's obviously been a major incident there, and we're going to go to a special report now from ABC News.
On the ground, any debris that is hit down there?
My vantage point is too far from the World Trade Center to make any determination of that.
Did you see any smoke, any flames coming out of the engines of that plane?
This is an ABC News special report.
Coming
now by the entire ABC network. Good Morning America was in progress in the East Coast and the Midwest, but we're joined by the entire network just to show you some pictures at the foot of New York City. This is at the World Trade Center. Obviously a major fire there, and there has been some sort of explosion. We don't fully know the details.
We do have some breaking news that we want to bring you around, and we're going to go to a picture, a live picture from New York City. Apparently a plane has crashed into the World Trade Center in New York, 8:52, with limited information at this point. We don't know about injuries in the building or people on the ground, but obviously this has potential for being a major disaster here. Look at that.
Now remember, there's two World Trade Centers. What we're seeing there is the apparent impact of the plane. It would look
to be on the upper 10 or so stories of this. I believe it's a 110-story building. The south, it looks like the south of the two towers there in the Wall Street area of New York City. It's incredible pictures right there.
Right, and we should point out, of course, that the World Trade Center was the target of that bombing several years ago, so this is an area that's had its share of problems. We don't know yet whether this was an accident, some sort of planned incident. We just want to show you this picture here, and we are trying to get some information about exactly what happened. We don't know what happened.
As Matt just mentioned, we have a breaking news story to tell you about. Apparently, a plane has just crashed into the World Trade Center here in New York City. It happened just a few moments ago, apparently. We have very little information available at this point in time, but on the phone we do have Jennifer Overstein, who apparently witnessed this event. Jennifer, can you hear me?
Hello?
Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, Katie.
Hi, can you please tell me what you saw and give me any information about what's going on there?
Yes, I have to tell you, it's quite terrifying. I'm in shock right now. I came out of the subway at Bowling Green. I was heading to work in Battery Park at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, and I come out, and I heard a boom, looked up, and there was a big ball of fire. I'm now looking north at the World Trade Center, and it is the West Twin Towers. I'm looking north. I'm in Battery Park right now, and you can hear the fire engines and the emergency crews behind me, and it is unbelievable. When the fire first burst, it was a... Hello?
Go ahead.
And we're getting reports of a plane crash in the World Trade Center in New York. You can see the pictures there. It's one of New York's tallest buildings. That's all the information we know at the moment, but as you can see, it is a considerable collision, and there is a large fire. That's all the information we have at the moment, but we'll be back with more details in just a short while at the top of the hour.
Or is that kind of late arrival?
It happened almost pretty much after we heard the crash.
Almost after you heard the crash.
It was pretty quick when we heard sirens, people acting on it.
Did you were you looking up as the plane approached the building, or did it only catch your attention after it crashed into the World Trade Center?
I heard like a sort of a crashing sound, but I looked up quick enough to actually see something go into the building, but everything happened so fast I wasn't quite sure what I was looking at.
So there's no way you can know whether or not the plane seemed to be in trouble before it crashed into the building?
Oh, no, I couldn't tell.
It's hard for us to tell from the picture we're seeing just how far down from the top that plane crashed. Have you any better eyesight to it? From your vantage point?
Not really. All I know is it definitely wasn't the top of the building, because that seems to be intact from what I saw. I really can't tell.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell us anything about how much debris came crashing to the ground, and whether or not anybody was hurt as a result?
I honestly don't know. I just saw a lot of what looked like crumbling glass, maybe just a lot of stuff falling down, but I can't tell you debris-wise.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, the timing of this is important. It comes before 9 o'clock. Perhaps, and we say that in hopeful fashion, perhaps not everybody was at work, because if that building was in fact crowded with workers, we're looking at probably some casualties and injuries of considerable proportions, but right now there's no way of telling that. Mr. Stewart, just one more time, and I know I'm exhausting what little information you have, but we have people joining us every moment. Take me through again where you were, when this happened, what you saw.
I was serving tables at a restaurant, and I just heard sort of like a boom sound. It almost sounded like an earthquake sound, and I looked up and I saw literally something like, it might have even bounced off a little bit of the building, and next thing I know I saw a big ball of fire on the top of the building, and just lots of smoke and what looked like to be debris or glass falling down, and it happened really quick. It's really hard to...
Okay. Stuart, I thank you very much. I appreciate that, sir.
Okay, my pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay.
One somewhat smaller.
Right.
And, of course, we know there are a variety of offices there. There are financial offices there. There are advertising offices, all kinds. We can only hope that since it is still a little bit early in New York, that maybe that maybe on some of those floors, some of the offices were still not open for business.
You can now see there on that one side, well, you can see flames now coming actually out of two sides of the building, and I'm minimizing actually the number of openings that are on those two faces of the World Trade Center. There's multiple, it looks like, holes
with fire
or openings
still going on
both sides of the tower.
As we've heard before, we said earlier that there was at least one speculative report that an airplane had crashed in, whether deliberately or accidentally, we don't know, and there are continuing reports from people who say that they saw an airplane, one woman saying that she saw a jet.
As we come on air, we have serious news of a major possible air crash in the United States. A plane appears to have crashed into one of New York's tallest buildings, the World Trade Center. As you can see, those are pictures of smoke pouring out of a gaping hole in the upper floors of the World Trade Center. It is in the downtown area of Manhattan and is one of the most heavily populated office buildings in New York. All we know at this moment is that there has been a plane crash in the morning time in New York. The plane smashed into one of the twin towers of the New York World Trade Center about half an hour ago. That's the information that we've got. And you can see the smoke and flames billowing from the building. One eyewitness said that it was a twin-engine plane, possibly a 737, which flew straight into the World Trade Center.
We're back at 9 o'clock Eastern Time on this Tuesday morning, and we're back with dramatic pictures of an accident that has happened just a short time ago. You're looking at the World Trade Center in Lower Manhattan, where just a few minutes ago we're told that a plane, some reports are that it was a small commuter plane, crashed into the upper floors of one of the twin towers. You can see fire and flames or smoke billowing from that tower. There is a gaping hole on the north side of the building. That's the side you're seeing to the left-hand side of your screen right now, and other damage to the west side of that building, which is to the right side of your screen. This, of course, happened just before the morning commute, before people were heading into their offices, and while I'm sure some people were already at work, immediately there's speculation or cause for concern. This is the World Trade Center that was the center of a terrorist bombing some years ago, so the questions have to be asked, was this purely an accident or could this have been an intentional act? But either way, extensive damage has been done to this building.
It also looks like there's smoke coming from the east side of the building. That shot we just saw looks like white smoke billowing out the side of the east side.
Obviously, horrified commuters were absolutely devastated when they heard this explosion. We talked with somebody a moment ago about that, Jennifer Oberstein, and also another eyewitness, Elliot Walker, who is actually a producer here on the Today Show. Elliot, can you hear me?
Yes, hi, Katie.
Hi, Elliot. Tell me where you are and what you saw.
Well, I live in this area. I've returned to my apartment, but I was walking down the sidewalk delivering my young daughter to school, and we heard a very loud sound, the kind of sound you hear when a plane is you know, going fast past you, followed by an enormous crash and an immediate explosion. I don't think we could feel shockwaves, but we sort of felt like we did. And we were in a position where we could see the Trade Center almost immediately between the other buildings. And an enormous fireball that must have been 300 feet across was visible immediately. A secondary explosion, I think, and then some smoke. There must have been a 3-block cloud of white smoke. Now, from where I was on the street a moment ago, you can in fact see smoke leaving the building on 3 sides. It seems to be coming out on at least 4 or 5 floors. The air is filled with hundreds of thousands of pieces of paper that are just sort of floating like confetti. The area is swarmed with emergency vehicles and sirens.
Have you
Obviously, we're very sensitive to this kind of thing in this neighborhood.
Elliot, have you, of course, because of the incident that occurred in the early 1990s, have you seen any evidence, Elliot, of people being taken out of the building? You say that emergency vehicles are there, understandably so, but of course the major concern is human.
Effort to attack the World Trade Center that is underway in downtown New York. We're going to give you a replay of what we just saw. I must admit I thought it was some sort of fire equipment coming in or some sort of observation plane. But it was obviously designed to attack the World Trade Center. We're going to show you that. Here's a replay of the videotape. In a second, that looks like a good-sized plane came in and hit the World Trade Center from the other side. So this is obviously, or would seem to be, and again, I'm dealing in speculation, but it would seem like there is a concerted attack against one of the towers of the World Trade Center underway.
We had seen a plane coming in from the other direction.
Just flew into it, into the other tower coming from south to north. I watched the plane fly into the World Trade Center. It was a jet. It was a very large plane. It was going fast. It went past the Ritz-Carlton Hotel that's being built and Battery Park. It flew right past, almost hit it, and then went in.
This is so shocking, of course, to everybody watching.
I've never seen anything like it. It literally flew itself into World Trade Center.
Obviously now we move from what appears to have, there it is right there.
Again, I'm looking from south to north, and it went into the one on the right.
That appeared to be at least a 727. We saw it a second ago. Here comes the videotape that we just showed you. You will see what appears to be a large plane. It could be a 727 right there, maybe even bigger, flying right into the side of the World Trade Center.
It was at least a 727. It was a jet. I couldn't believe my eyes watching it right above me.
And now you have to move from talk about a possible accident to talk about something deliberate that has happened here. We're going to immediately check with air traffic control in the area to find out if they had contact with either of these planes before the accident. But what we've just seen is about the most shocking videotape I've ever seen.
Jim, is now a very serious fire on the south tower of the World Trade Center. This is about, I would estimate, about the 60th or perhaps the 70th floor of the tower, right on the corner, the northeast corner of the south tower, flames shooting out of the building. We have absolutely no reports of who was in there, but you've got to believe that being around the 9 o'clock hour that people were just sitting down for a day's work in those buildings.
Jim, I was just thinking that if I'm not mistaken, remember several years ago, Mayor Giuliani moved the emergency management office to one of the higher, to the 30th floor or around that area of one of the towers of the World Trade Center, and that's indeed the brain of all the emergency management activity. And now,
I believe, though, that's in one of the other towers. Ollie, can you talk to that? Ollie, can you hear me?
I hear you, Jim.
Dave brought up the point that the mayor's emergency management office, the so-called bunker, is in one of the towers of the World Trade Center, but I don't believe it's one of the two top ones.
No, it's not. It's about the 30th floor. It is not up there. And by the way, for those who are wondering about the structural stuff, both towers appear to be structurally sound. They're not only small pieces of debris circulating in the air around where the explosions occurred. The buildings themselves seem to be intact. In fact, as far as their structure is concerned, there have been talk over the years about the threat of terrorism making the buildings fall down onto the streets. But I can reassure everybody that they seem to be city holding up fairly well while efforts are going forward to fight the fires and whatever happened in those two towers.
Now we can see smoke emanating from many of the floors of the two towers. We see to the left of your picture there smoke coming out of the floors above where the plane crashed into, I believe that's the north tower that we're looking at there.
Thousands of people gathered where I am here at City Hall Park, in front of City Hall, just watching what's going on. It's very difficult to, they come by and they say, what happened, what happened? And you just got to say something hit the building and then something hit both buildings.
Well, we saw clearly, we didn't see the first one, but we saw clearly that a plane deliberately crashed into one of the upper floors of the World Trade Center. That was the second plane. So two planes crashed into the upper floors of each of the World Trade Center towers. And I understand now that Port Authority headquarters are in one of those buildings somewhere near that location.
Jim, I
yes?
don't know whether we've confirmed that this was an air crash, or to be more specific.
Wow. Wow. Miss Renault, are you still on with me? Teresa Renault?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Can you tell us if the scene has changed from your vantage point?
I would say from my vantage point right now, it looks like there are very few flames coming out of the first tower, still a lot of smoke. The second tower, we can still see flames coming out of the window, the north window, and a lot of smoke. A lot of smoke. The tops of the building are covered in smoke.
And from your vantage point, you can't see anything of what's happening on the ground?
No, I cannot. You can hear a lot of sirens out on the street right now. One thing that you can see in the windows is all of the emergency system lights. That was one thing we could see. All of them were blinking off and on in the first tower when that happened. And I can't see them anymore. The second tower, I cannot see any emergency lights in the building blinking.
All right, I'm going to thank you both right there and pass along the word that we are getting from the FBI, that at this point the FBI is trying to confirm that this was an intentional act. At this point, it's pure speculation. Mr. Davis has told us of what he saw, and that it appeared the first plane, a large aircraft, bored into the westernmost of the two towers in intentional fashion. And while we were speaking moments ago, a second plane, hard to identify the size of it, bored its way into the easternmost tower. So we have two crashes. Here's a different angle of the same plane. You see it off there on the left, boring into there. But again, at this point, it is restricted airspace. It is a clear day, so the suspicions are high that these are intentional acts. But the FBI at this point is still trying to confirm that these are
not actually on the site of the World Trade Centers. ABC's Peter Jennings is at the anchor desk uptown here in New York and is now in position. Peter, I suspect you are looking at exactly the same pictures. Well, I know you're looking at the same pictures we are.
We are, Charlie. We've been watching it from the beginning, and we'll be watching this for much of the day. There is chaos in New York at the moment. There have been not one but two incidents, as Charlie and Diane have so ably reported so far. The second one coming at 9:03, when television was on live, and you could see what was clearly a jet aircraft flying into the second trade tower. Both trade towers now, these 110-story high towers, have now been hit. There is chaos here, or there's chaos in the immediate area. There is confusion in Washington, because now everybody is engaged in this. The Pentagon is involved in this. All the intelligence services are engaged in this in the morning. And as we look at those towers, let's just simply keep looking at these towers this morning. And if you have the feed at home, I actually don't have it here, so somebody could please make sure that I have the photo picture of what's going on. The various airports in the area, Newark and LaGuardia particularly, have already suspended operations. The city asked the Federal Aviation Administration for permission to close down airspace in all of New York, lest there be a third aircraft or some other untoward incident involved.
helicopter has crashed, apparently as part of whatever this operation has been, and Jamie McIntyre is there. Jamie, what are you hearing?
Well, Aaron, there is a lot of confusion here at the Pentagon. It appears that something hit the Pentagon on the outside of the 5th corridor, on the Army corridor. Several Army officers I talked to reported hearing a big explosion, seeing shards of metal coming past their window. The Pentagon has been evacuated. Emergency services personnel were rushing to reports of several people trapped in the building. Most of the building's 24,000 people are outside of the building or in the center courtyard as emergency teams try to sort out what has happened here. There is, of course, thick black smoke billowing from the scene. There's a lot of confusion. The Defense Protective Service, which is the police force here in the Pentagon, has been urging people to get out of the building and move away from the scene so they can handle the emergency situation. Again, it appears that an aircraft of some sort did hit the side of the Pentagon, the west front, which faces sort of toward Arlington National Cemetery. It's a corridor where a lot of Army offices are located.
Wow.
And some people were...
Jamie, I need you to stop for a second. There has just been a huge explosion. We can see a billowing smoke rising. And I'll tell you that I can't see that second tower, but there was a...
Let's go to the trade tower again, because, John, we now have what do we have? We don't...
It looks like a new plume, a new large plume of smoke.
Now, it may be that something fell off the building. It may be that something has fallen. We don't know, to be perfectly honest. But that is what you're looking at, is the current. That's the scene at this moment at the World Trade Center. Dan Daler from ABC's Good Morning America is down in the general vicinity. Dan, can you tell us what has just happened?
Yes, Peter, it's Don Daler down here. I'm 4 blocks north of the World Trade Center. The second building that was hit by the plane has just completely collapsed. The entire building has just collapsed, as if a demolition team set off. When you see the old demolitions of these old buildings, it folded down on itself, and it is not there anymore. That should be it. It
Thanks
has
very much,
completely
Dan.
collapsed.
Now a second area there of smoke, so perhaps indicating that some sort of explosion or fire there. Now, of course, what may have happened, of course, with the all these systems compromised in the building, you may be getting an explosion from that. We do not know what has happened, but obviously something has happened there near the base of the building, setting off another round of major smoke and apparently a fire. But we don't know whether, again, it's because the building, because the earlier damage.
Okay.
The tower is collapsed.
This, and it looks like we're seeing, unfortunately, one of the worst fears that might have happened has come to pass. One of those towers, 110 stories, has apparently collapsed.
Arlington Fire here called in extra equipment. They've called in the National Airport Foam Unit, which...
Dave,
yes.
we just want to break in because we want to go back to New York, where Dan Rather is anchoring our coverage, where one of the towers at the World Trade Center has collapsed. Let's go back to CBS.
No confirmed fatalities. Now, in Washington, the Pentagon has had a fire and explosions, much speculation of what would have caused the fires and explosions at the Pentagon in Washington, but very few facts. David Martin, our Pentagon correspondent, says that he has seen, I believe he said 5 injured people at the Pentagon. One eyewitness, and only one so far, is quoted as saying he thinks, I put that in quotation marks, he thinks a plane crashed into the Pentagon. But there'll be rumors all day. We're going to try to separate the rumors from the facts. Now, you're looking at a live picture of the twin towers of the World Trade Center, in flames, with much smoke. In the last few minutes, there have been 2 reports, but not yet officially confirmed, that a portion of at least one of the towers has collapsed. But I caution that that's an unconfirmed report, although it comes from 2 sources, and it's unclear whether that collapse is about the interior of the building or some portion of the exterior of the building. I want to emphasize again, not to be redundant, but this is a day in which rumors are going to spread like mildew in damp basements. And there'll be reports. Some of them will be officially confirmed, some not. That's the environment in which we're dealing. Now, President Bush was in Florida this morning. He called this an apparent act of terrorism and rushed back to Washington. The president is in the air going back to Washington at the moment. Now, in Washington, the reports spread that a plane also crashed at the Pentagon. See, as David Martin says, there are at least several injuries. Several is the word he used. The FAA has banned all aircraft takeoffs nationwide. Here in New York, the city is on a full terrorist alert. Bridges and tunnels are closed. You recall the World Trade Center was the target of a terrorist bombing in 1993. Now, again, it's important to point out that television, what we can show you is what is at the end of the television camera. The whole city is not in smoke and flames, not by a long shot. The city is on a terrorist alert. Entry into the city has been closed off. Tunnels and bridges are closed off as a precautionary measure. But, you know, in many, many areas of New York City, life goes on this morning, and the same is true in Washington, D.C. So just keep in mind that when you see this picture constantly, it's of one section of New York City, and we go to Washington for the picture there, the Pentagon, the same thing.
Commercial aircraft, and in one case, a 767 from on a flight from Boston to Los Angeles. We do not have any sort of specifics onto the plane that may have hit the Pentagon, or as to the first plane, the second plane rather, that hit the World Trade Center. But this in itself would be a very dramatic development. Aircraft hijackings in the United States is not something that has happened in recent time, at least in terms of large commercial aircraft.
Of course, yeah, we do have Audrey Barnes back now on the phone. She has a view of the Pentagon. So, Audrey, yeah, there she is now. So, Audrey, tell us where you are and what you can see.
Okay, if you look over my shoulder, you can see the Pentagon is still on fire right now. Right beside it, you can see hundreds of Pentagon employees have been evacuated from that building, and it is still burning right now. Most of the fire, you can see the flames shooting up behind that little guard shack there. There are hundreds of people on the lawn, and every 5 seconds another emergency vehicle goes by to try to get this fire under control. We have seen employees trying to console each other. People are walking around in absolute shock and disbelief. Now, we were at the State Department right when this happened. We saw State Department police running out of the building, telling everybody get away, and I look up and see this giant plume of smoke coming from the Pentagon. So we got over here, and this is what we found, the Pentagon on fire there. Still quite a scene of devastation out here. People really don't even know which way to go. They've gone away from the building. Now people are running back towards the building. Just a scene of utter chaos out here.
We've just received word that they are have shut down the 14th Street Bridge and the Memorial Bridge shut down.
The bridge is shut down. People are being able to pass by the Pentagon heading into the district, but there's no traffic going towards 395, towards Richmond, or 244. That's all shut down.
Audrey, if you would hold on for 1 second, we just also want to report now, the Associated Press now reporting that an explosion has hit another building near the World Trade Center. We were speculating at that point whether it was a consequence of the original attacks. Now it appears to be another explosion hitting another building near the World Trade Center. Audrey, with regard to the Pentagon, the reports that we have received is that the plane may have impacted on that helicopter pad, and there's a small control tower there set up on that side of the Pentagon near where you're standing. Can you see any of the wreckage itself? Can you confirm that, or does it look like it actually impacted the building itself?
It is not on top of the building, and your description of a helipad seems to be what I'm hearing from people out here. And the fire crews are able to fight this fire from the ground, so it seems like most of the wreckage is on the ground right beside the Pentagon, and the smoke is just billowing from that side of the building. So that seems to fit with what you're saying about that helipad. We also have heard reports that witnesses have seen the tail end of some kind of aircraft going into the Pentagon. We are still trying to confirm that information.
And perhaps an hour ago, there was a convoy, I can't think of a better word, a convoy of fire and police trucks racing down the West Side Highway, and this is in the middle of rush hour. Obviously, every available fire unit here in Manhattan has been brought to the Trade Center. Outside the White House, John King, our senior White House correspondent. John.
Hello, Aaron. They have pushed us even further back away from the White House now, and there are more than a half dozen fire trucks, some of the Secret Service now patrolling the perimeter in Lafayette Park, which is directly across from the White House, have automatic rifles drawn to keep people away from the park, and they're policing back and forth. You can probably hear additional fire apparatus arriving on the scene. Senior White House staffers who were evacuated, all they can tell us is that they were told that there was a credible threat on the White House as well, and that they were told to evacuate the premises. What we do not know is whether or not the Vice President and the National Security Team have stayed inside the White House Situation Room. We know that they were directing and monitoring operations from there as of just about 20 minutes ago. But the White House staff, the Executive Office Building staff, and all the office buildings around, including the Treasury Department and some government and some non-government office buildings, people have been evacuated out into the street. And again, the Secret Service now putting up yellow police line tape, and some of them patrolling Lafayette Park with automatic rifles, which is a scene quite extraordinary here across from the White House.
John, tell us as best you can what the government's national security apparatus will do right now. I mean, what do you guess is happening, and where is it happening?
Well, I don't want to guess at all, but from the White House Situation Room, a president or a vice president can direct a war, can direct a full-scale world war. The White House Situation Room is where all information is accessible to all information from the United States military, from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, from the Federal Aviation Administration in this case. The White House Situation Room is prepared just for situations like this, unfortunately, to be prepared in a time of crisis for the president to monitor incoming information and to direct any U.S. military or non-military emergency response. The White House Situation Room is a bomb shelter, for that matter. That part of the White House is a bomb shelter. Whether or not they have stayed in there is unclear. We know in the past that would be the routine. We just do not have a direct answer as yet, because most of the staff, if not all of the staff, has been evacuated from the premises.
So I gather you're just you're not able to get any calls into the building right now, or at least not getting them answered at this point.
Calls you get into the building are not answered at this point. And more fire apparatus showing up now as we speak. We saw most of the senior staff come out. We have not seen the national security staff that we would recognize anyway, but I should note there are other gates from the White House. We are on the north side.
John, you're being drowned out by the sirens. Alan Dodd-Frank of our bureau here in New York joins us on the phone. Alan, where are you?
Hi, Aaron. Our colleague Jennifer Westhoven also just arrived. She was closer to the building. I'm just south of Canal Street, about 10 blocks north of World Trade Center. Just before 10 o'clock, parts of the building began peeling away. People started screaming. Jennifer tells me, because she was a little closer to the building, that the police began yelling, "Run, run," and thousands of people started running away from the buildings as they were falling. That was, of course, followed by a onrush of ambulances and special police vehicles. Some people have told us, although I can't confirm this, that dozens of stories of the building have fallen away, maybe down as low as the 30th floor.
This group has primarily steered away from the more extreme end of the violence scale. They focused less on suicide bombings, more on gun attacks and that sort of thing in the territories against Israelis.
Well, if
this holds up, this is a very different tactic.
Well, if it is true, and of course the Democratic Front for Liberation of Palestine was very much involved in attacking aircraft in the 1970s, which carried Americans. So certainly let's accept your notion that it's a recent attack on Americans. Thank you, Carl, very much.
You bet.
As Mr. Olson makes clear, there has been at least one claim, and those of us who cover this for a very long period of time are always suspicious of claims. People who cover international terrorism. I'm going to interrupt myself. Linda Douglas, our Capitol Hill correspondent, I think is on the phone, and if she's not, she already reports there has been an explosion of some kind at the Capitol. Is Linda Douglas on the telephone? Let's get her on the phone as quickly as we have. She just reported a couple of minutes ago that the leaders of the Congress, Senator Lott, Senator Daschle, the Republican and Democratic leaders in the Senate, had been taken to some have been taken to some undisclosed secure location. Our general assumption is that there's no panic involved in this, that somebody in the Capitol building, as someone in the White House, has a book which says that when these things happen, here, Thomas, maybe you can confirm this for me, when these things happen, there are certain modalities which you behave, and as you see the hierarchy of the American political establishment, the military establishment being attacked, you want to protect the chain of command.
Absolutely. The first thing they try to do is get everyone in secure positions so they can gather information and make decisions about what to do next. One of the things that law enforcement officials had been planning for is the notion of a multi-tiered attack. An attack occurring in multiple places simultaneously. Because one of the things they've talked about is that terrorists want to project more fear, as much fear as possible, and one of the ways you can do it is to have this notion that attacks are happening on multiple fronts.
Yeah, well, and we've never seen anything like this before in the United States, of course, and in fact, not seen anything like this in my recollection. I've been doing this for 30-some-odd years. I don't recall any multitude of attacks. We've had 2 or 3. We've had 2 suicide bombers in a short period of time in the Middle East. We had the 2 embassies in Africa, in Kenya and in Tanzania, the attack 2 summers ago in the United States. But the notion that that terrorists, either an organization or organizations, plural, should be able to mount a concerted effort against the United States in this way, causing in this instance so many casualties, in the instance of the trade tower certainly so many casualties, is going to astound people in the political and military and intelligence establishment.
Absolutely. The notion that you could have multiple attacks like this, they had been planning for it, they had not seen it. This is an extraordinary escalation, one that they were predicting would happen, but no one would think that would happen this quickly.
City, the Washington Monument. Frank, what do you see? What do you hear?
I'm on the west grounds of the Washington Monument. The area has been completely evacuated by Park Police, and I think I can answer Dave Statter's question about that secondary explosion.
Yes.
It wasn't an explosion. That was the sonic boom of jet fighters that were scrambled out of Andrews Air Force Base, we believe. They just circled the Washington area, flying from the east out to the west, and they were in a hurry, and they were high up in the air. So jet fighters, at least 1, possibly 2, were scrambled, probably as a precautionary measure. Needless to say, downtown Washington, D.C., except for the vehicular traffic, which is bumper to bumper, the rest of the city has been shut down. It looks like a Sunday morning here. The mall is absolutely empty. Park Police came through about 10 minutes ago, evacuated the entire area, and told tourists to go somewhere else. But I can tell you right now that at least 1, if not 2, jet fighters have been scrambled. They are patrolling the skies over Washington.
Frank Herzog, thank you very much. Let me just read you the lead. The Associated Press lead just came out of New York. First of all, let's check in with Dave Statter at the Pentagon. Dave?
It collapsed right now. As you can see, I assume you're taking our picture. I do not have a monitor, but right now we just had a middle section here of the E-ring of the Pentagon collapse from the amount of fire and destruction from this. So obviously there was a great deal of damage here. It just collapsed. We don't know who is inside or how many people were inside. You heard somebody, one of the people who was inside the building, talk to us a short time ago and said this E-ring of the Pentagon has a great many senior officials. So if somebody was planning something, this might have been the place if they wanted to get senior officials. Again, most of the fire on the outside of the building has been extinguished. There's still some spot fires on the outside of the building, and still, from what I can see, a great deal of fire inside. So now you have a gaping hole on the west side of the Pentagon here at Washington Boulevard, and this collapse just happened. It was not an explosion, a secondary explosion. This apparently the damage from the great deal of fire and the structural damage from the plane crash.
Any word yet, Dave, on casualties?
Other than seeing the 2 people we saw medevac who had serious burns, I can't confirm any others. They've been working on people, but we don't know what's inside that building, to be honest with you.
So
certainly anybody in those windows or in those offices by those windows, you have to be very, very concerned about right now.
All right, Dave Statter, reporting from the Pentagon here, you can see from Dave's camera shot several people being escorted out of the Pentagon. The Pentagon is being evacuated, as is the White House, the U.S. Capitol.
Most monuments, museums, the city basically, as you've heard from Frank Herzog and from photojournalist Rick Armstrong near the Washington Monument, closed down. Almost everything is closed down.
As you can see, a portion of the Pentagon has collapsed. This happened after a jet apparently deliberately plowed into the Pentagon.
We have Daniel McAdams on the phone. He is an eyewitness. Daniel, good morning. What did you see and where are you?
I
I'm here in Arlington, just off of Columbia Pike, probably about 2.5 miles from the Pentagon. And we were sitting in our living room having coffee, and it sounded like a military jet flyover that they do sometimes, you know, very, very low altitude flyover. And then just a couple of seconds later, we heard a massive boom. All of our doors and windows shook. We went outside, looked out the window, and then saw a plume of smoke.
All right, Daniel, thank you very much. Let's go back to Dave Statter. Dave, what do you have?
I know, hey, they're evacuating us now. They believe another plane. This could be a rumor, but they're evacuating everybody. Possibility of another plane coming in this direction. Certainly, but this is a major evacuation at the moment. Again, it could all be a rumor, but FBI is evacuating everybody out of this area. I've got to go at the moment because they will not let me stay here.
Be safe, be safe. And we heard from Frank Herzog that boom that Dave thought he heard before was Air Force jets scrambling high up in the sky on alert. If there is something else coming in, we hope they get it first.
Immediate air travel basically grounded in the United States. We're going to go back now to Audrey Barnes, who has another eyewitness to the Pentagon attack. Audrey.
Michael, I have a witness who was inside the building when the Pentagon... tell me what your name is, sir, and where were you when this happened?
My name is Lieutenant Colonel Battle, Terry Battle. I was in a meeting inside the Pentagon when we heard a loud boom. Was basically all you could say. We were in the middle of a briefing. Loud noise went off. Everybody started clearing out of the building.
At that point, what did you think had happened, or what have you heard happened?
I'm not really sure. We've been through these kind of drills before on evacuation of the building, so initially just thought it was an evacuation. But then once we got outside, clearly, as you can see the black smoke rising, we recognized that it was something very serious.
Witnesses describe a commercial airplane was actually what hit the Pentagon. Is that what you've seen from closer up?
I don't know. I was inside the building. I'm not sure what happened. I've heard the reports that are coming out, like everybody else, that it was a plane that hit the side of the building.
I'll just ask the Colonel to stand by for a moment because
right now the focus is on getting people out.
Mike, if we can, because we do want to get to Dan Nickel with the U.S. Capitol Police. Tell us what's happening there at the Capitol. Dan.
10 minutes ago, we ordered a mandatory evacuation of the Capitol and all of the House and Senate office buildings. The buildings are now closed to the public, and we've ordered the staff members and also the members of Congress to leave the buildings.
Were there any specific threats against the Capitol, Dan?
No, this is a precautionary measure based on what's happening in New York and the attack on the Pentagon. We felt it was in the best interest of national security and the security of Congress and the citizens up here to close the buildings and do an evacuation.
Are the leaders in Congress now being afforded extra security? Are they being taken to secure locations? Where is the Speaker? Where are the majority and minority leaders right now?
We are taking extraordinary precautions now to protect the leadership of the Congress. We are responsible for their security, and we're taking measures to ensure that they are safe and they can continue to coordinate efforts with the President and the leadership of the executive branch. We're also taking precautions to protect the buildings and the Capitol itself.
Dan, would you be specific as to the extent of these evacuations? Does this the Capitol evacuation then include House, Senate buildings, office buildings, Library of Congress?
It's all buildings
Supreme
under our
Court.
jurisdiction. We have 19 buildings under our jurisdiction. We've ordered mandatory evacuations of all of those buildings. They are now closed.
In New York this morning, certainly is an interesting turn of events, but in terms of the rescue effort, we have been seeing emergency personnel arriving on the scene ever since this happened. You can see there appears to be, I don't know, John, can you see there's a military, some military personnel up here on the ridge. This ridge right here, a lot of people have been coming out of the annex, and a lot of cars have been stopping on the highway, and people have been getting out of their cars, and they've been up on this ridge because you get a pretty good view of what's going on. And you can see that the military personnel are now telling them to get off the ridge, and they're going to be clearing out the area. We're going to try to stay here to keep you on top of what's going on and what we can see from our vantage point, but we'll have to wait and see what the military tells us to do. Back to you all.
Okay, thanks very much, Megan. I want to give you this up. Apparently, a portion of the Pentagon has collapsed, according to the Associated Press. Also, according to the Associated Press, this morning, there is a report that General Richard Myers, the vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, said that prior to the crash into the Pentagon, military officials had been notified that another hijacked plane had been heading from New York area to Washington. He said he assumed that the hijacked plane from New York to Washington was the one that hit the Pentagon. But again,
one of the busiest times. And then we saw smoke coming out, and everybody started running out, and we saw the plane on the other side of the building, and there was smoke everywhere, and people are
windows. Over there, they're jumping out the windows, I guess, because they're trying to save themselves. I don't know. And I don't know. Everybody just doesn't know where to go. They won't let. Everything is blocked off. You can't even. They're telling us to get out, but there's nowhere to go. And then I heard that another plane hit, and if you go over by there, you can see the people jumping out the window. They're jumping out the window right now. Oh my God.
All right, ma'am, thank you.
The panic of an eyewitness at the World Trade Center talking about people jumping out of the windows of the World Trade Center to try and escape the collapsing World Trade Center as a result of 2 suicide plane attacks.
Let me just briefly go to Randy. Randy, just look out there and tell me what you're thinking when you see what now appears that at least part of one of the landmark buildings in this city, one of the most recognizable buildings in the country, is gone.
It's the kind of moment you hope will never come. When you have been in government, when you care as much about this city and this country as a mayor like Rudy Giuliani does, it's a moment you pray will never come, and you pray for the families of anyone affected by this tragedy. But as a city, you know, we come together and our emergency services provide every support they can in the face of such a senseless tragedy.
It is an unbelievable scene as you look down. I mean, we stand here at some point every day looking out at the city this time of year. It's extraordinarily pretty, and you see those 2 buildings high above lower Manhattan, and we look out there today and you see this gaping hole in one of them, these plumes of smoke that continue to pour from the scene, and you know that there's nothing behind. That second tower, or at least parts of it, are gone. We join
Associated Press that a car bomb has exploded outside the State Department. We are just hearing this from the Associated Press, a car bomb exploding outside the State Department here in Washington. We have no details of that, but we'll bring them to you as they come in to us. Let's go back to Megan McGrath, who is near the Pentagon off Columbia Pike. Megan?
Yeah, if you take a look behind me, you can see in the last few minutes we've actually seen that section of the Pentagon where the explosion took place. It has actually collapsed in a rather large section. You can see that the smoke is still billowing from the area. We still are seeing some flames coming from inside the building, and the whole section has literally collapsed upon itself. That will give you an idea of just how tremendous this explosion was. Just to be able to do this kind of damage to such a secure building, it just really indicates how powerful this was. And again, we were driving by the area, and you felt kind of a tremor as you were driving by. You could feel a disturbance in the air, and then that's when we looked over, and that's when we saw the fireball and saw the damage that was done. Now, we are being told by military officials to clear the area. There were a lot of people, a lot of folks in cars, a lot of employees from the Navy Annex who actually left their building, abandoned their cars in the street, and were up on this ridge taking a look at the damage and watching the rescue effort. All of those people are being cleared out of the area at this point. And that's really all we can tell you. But if you just take a look at the side of that building, it really is quite dramatic. And of course, emergency crews are here on the scene trying to secure the situation, but at this point they are evacuating everybody out of this area. Back to you.
Thank you, Megan. As we heard from Cheryl Johnson, there are massive traffic jams around as we continue to follow the impact of this here in Washington, D.C.
Apparently all federal employees have been released from their offices, and that is going to cause major problems. And once again, the latest news is that we have received word from the Associated Press that a car bomb has exploded outside the State Department. That, according to senior law enforcement officials quoted by the Associated Press. And now we're going to go to Jerry Edwards with Metro Traffic Control, and he can perhaps show us some other pictures and tell us what the effect on traffic is. Jerry?
Barbara and Joe, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Indeed, as the federal offices now are being released and people are leaving downtown, let me bring up a couple of the traffic cameras. We are looking at particularly tough traffic in many locations. We'll start over Northern Virginia on 395. This is outbound traffic. The left side of your screen, camera's a little blurry. Outbound 395. Delays begin back at the 14th Street Bridge. You can see police have blocked off the exit, which would take you up toward the Pentagon for obvious reasons. So 395 now, coming out of downtown, is backing up. And again, there's no exit to the Pentagon, which is causing a lot of confusion. Route 110 is closed. Let's switch switch gears and show you the inbound side of the Roosevelt. I'm sorry, this is the outer loop of the Woodrow Wilson Bridge. No problems at the Woodrow Wilson Bridge, no accidents. It's all volume right now as people are leaving. This is, in essence, an afternoon rush hour we're dealing with, so be prepared for that. Here we are with another shot of traffic getting across the Woodrow Wilson Bridge. If we get additional information, what we're being told now, of course, all the Potomac bridges, the Memorial, the Roosevelt, and of course, traffic coming up the 14th Street Bridge is going to be diverted. 395 is closed at the exit for the Pentagon. Folks in Maryland don't have any problems right now. We've taken a few calls, people concerned about traffic in Maryland. That's not a problem right now. If we can go to V4 on the fly here, guys, and see the 14th Street Bridge. This is the inbound side, which kind of surprises us at this point, where 395 northbound to the inbound 14th Street Bridge is open. However, at this point, it appears that most of the traffic that would come off the Southeast-Southwest Freeway headed into downtown, of course, is going to be completely closed off. So again, we will keep you updated. But what we're dealing with now, of course, is everyone's leaving downtown, headed outbound. So the inbound side is not as important as the outbound side. We're dealing with basically an afternoon rush hour, plus all the activity that's going on.
There is a large fire at the Pentagon. The Pentagon has been evacuated. And there's, you can see, perhaps the second tower, the front tower, the top portion of which is collapsing. Good Lord. There are no words. You can see large pieces of the building falling. You can see the smoke rising. You can see a portion of the side of the building now just being covered on the right side as I look at it, covered in smoke. This is just a horrific scene and a horrific moment.
We believe the second tower of the World Trade Center just collapsed. That's what you were looking at live. You can't see very well through the smoke, but it is obvious that those two large structures that we saw just a little while ago aren't there. We're going to pick up live coverage from our sister station in New York, WCBS. Let's listen to what they're
reduced
saying.
to a pile of rubble and ash, smoke billowing above the city. Jim Smith, stay with us if you will. What is the evaluation and what else you're able to see from your vantage point?
Well, Michael, we have seen the entire lower half of Manhattan just completely covered in smoke, debris, dust, everything well south of Canal Street is just completely and covered in this smoke and dust at this time. There is not anything recognizable of what were the two trade towers, nothing standing out from those clouds of dust at this time.
We understand the schools in the area reporting that the children who are there, at last report, the children were safe. They're saying that the parents, if you can get there, and in this, frankly, it'd be quite difficult. The schools are under lockdown. The children are not allowed to leave unless the parents come to get them. But we have heard word that the children are okay. The casualties here are far, we don't even want to speculate.
No,
we do have reporters at St. Vincent's, at Bellevue, throughout the city, crews throughout the city. We know that you're worried about your loved ones down there. This is the financial district of the world, and clearly untold number of people that are down there right now, and this is as close as we can get to the scene. Jim Smith, you're about, what, 5 miles?
Yeah, that's right, Michael. We're about 5 to 6 miles away. We've been forced to move to Staten Island at this point to bring you these pictures, and we understand to go along with the airport shutting down and no airplanes being allowed to take off nationwide, we have been in contact with military aircraft in the area that are enforcing a complete no-fly zone. Once we land, we will not be allowed to take back off. So as aircraft are removed from the area, none will be allowed back in.
That's understandable. Langley Air Force Base, all the Air Force bases you would imagine are on high alert. Possibly, I don't know if anybody, we're not hearing that. We're trying to get the beat on whether the military and to what aspect the military has been and is taking action about this. Again, not a confirmation per se, but it's hard to imagine that this is anything but a terrorist attack. We're getting some information here.
Just the timeline of the events, but let's stay with what you're looking at, if we could, as a live picture of what is left of the Manhattan skyline. Jim, I want to bring you back in because we have reports that there are United States fighter jets cruising the area over New Jersey. Can you confirm that?
Yes, we can. Our pilot has been in contact with some F-16 fighters that have been in the area. We do not know exactly.
All right, welcome back to Eyewitness News. We want to report Mark Brady of Prince George's County Fire and EMS are telling all duty personnel to report to their duty stations immediately, regardless of their schedule. They want all Prince George's Fire and EMS personnel to report to their duty stations.
Here's a picture that doesn't exist anymore, because that's not a live picture anymore. Good Lord, it just